Who says you need to be a pro painter to get good results? Absolute twat burgers, that's so. So let I, Ben Jai, serve as encouragement to you, dear listener. Welcome to Marvel Crisis Protocol's Ultron Speed Painting Guide for the Casual Painter. And to be clear, I am obviously not a pro painter myself, but one thing I can reliably proclaim is that the learning curve to make a miniature look good on the tabletop is not as steep as you might think. So let's talk about finding the right balance between speed and quality. At the core of this guide and what we'll be using is the Citadel paint range. Now, we like to focus on their contrast paints, as this will more often than not allow you to get the same effect as applying a base coat and a wash all in one go. But you'll find, for reasons that will become obvious, that we'll be using all sorts of Citadel paints for Ultron. And if you already have or prefer a different range of paints, we got you covered, as we'll pop the names of the closest equivalents up on screen as we go. First things first then, you need to prime your model. We're opting to use the complimentary Grey Sear spray, as it supports a more metallic look when the contrast is applied. Of course, if you plan to use a different type of primer, make sure it's a white or off-white. First step is a bit tricky because we need to start applying some Magma Droth Flame in the rivulets of Ultron's armour, the areas where his power source or energy resides. Feel free to slow down the video to see how much coverage I gave it, but just as importantly, pick where you think it should go. Some places are obvious, others not so much. The application of the paint is fairly straightforward though, as you'll just need to carefully paint up to the edge of the recesses and just keep an eye out for any egregious pooling in the middle. Then we've got the straightforward task of painting the silver, and for this we've used the lightest silver known to man, Stormhost Silver. A layer paint that's not very pigment heavy, so you might even have to apply a couple of coats to get an even coverage, but rest assured we'll still be saving time in the long run. I also should have mentioned at the outset that contrast-like paints, no matter who you buy them from, are going to at best provide a pale imitation of metallics, hence why we're already deviating from the plan. That does mean though that the bulk of the armour is a two-step process, where we now apply a steady coat of Soulblight Grey, a shade by trade, and this little fella's going to bring some dark contrast into the recesses for you, without dulling the silver so much that you'll need to go back and highlight the whole bleeding model. At which point we need to call this a not so speed painting tutorial. This extra step is more than worth it and will look 10 times better than any one coat alternative. And well, that's the model proper done. Moving to the base, it's a case of grabbing your nearest Basilicanium grey paint pot and liberally slavering it on the base, rocks and all. Feel free to paint it around the rim as well, although the finished article around the edge is a patch job at best. Still, that's a painted model in no time at all, and whilst that might more than meet your needs, we're going to continue with Ultron at the paint station to add a few highlights and finishing touches to the model. Again, nothing too excessive in the spirit of this video, but for just a little extra effort, we can bring some pop to the model. So first things first, we need the orange to glow. Magma Droth Flame isn't the most contrasty of contrast paints, so in order to achieve that variation in colour, we're instead going to apply some Uriel yellow in a somewhat unpredictable fashion. We're looking for a molten type of effect, so a pinch here and a splash there is all that's needed. The contours are far too irregular to give any real pointers here, suffice to say tread lightly and work your way to applying more and more paint until you're satisfied with the result. And then, believe it or not, we're back to the base, and here we need to differentiate the stone and the flat concrete. As such, a dry brush of Dawnstone over the rock was enough to bring a very subtle highlight back into the rough natural stone. Leaving then a slightly lighter Administratum Grey to be dry brushed over the concrete flats. Now, taking your time when dry brushing flat surfaces is imperative. Make sure you really got the bulk of the paint off your brush before lightly brushing back and forth so as to avoid seeing pig ugly streaks appear from nowhere. One final dip into the paint with some Abaddon black around the edge of the base, and then job's a good 'un. And that, as they say, is proof that you don't need to be an expert to get good results. I'm sure many of you will be happy with just the initial steps, but it just goes to show what can be achieved with minimal time investment either way. Stay tuned for more speed painting guides. Alas, I've been the voice in your head, and this video has ended.